How do you encourage your kids to read when they just don't seem to want to? How do you find engaging books for them? What do you do when your kids hate writing? You need to keep your kids interested, but as soon as you mention it's for school, they resist. These are real life scenarios from moms that follow me on Instagram. I put up a question box and I said, hey, give me your biggest struggles and needs when it comes to language arts. This is the most responses I've ever had on Instagram in one of those question boxes ever. And I thought I would address some of those here because I'm sure that you have some of these same struggles and needs in your homeschool as well. If we haven't met before, hi, I'm Jess from the blog SiloAndSage.com, and today we are going to dive deep into talking about language arts, the struggles, your needs, how we can address these issues that we're having with our individual kids, and how we can just be better home educators when it comes to language arts. I'm going to give you some resources, some tips, and if you don't know, I'm a former teacher. I used to teach elementary school. I've taught 5th grade, 4th grade, kindergarten, and preschool, but then I also am a homeschool mom of 5. My kids right now range in age, they're from 17 all the way down to 8. So I've taught a lot of different kids with different styles, different struggles, different interests, some kids who love to read, some kids who don't really like it so much, some kids who really struggle with writing, and some kids who literally want to be writers when they grow up. Some kids who were very slow at the process of reading, and some kids who got it really quickly, both in my home and as a teacher. So I've kind of experienced a lot of different scenarios. And I gotta tell you, language arts is kind of my jam. Now, if you want to ask me a lot of math questions, I'm probably going to refer you elsewhere. Like, I maybe would give you some suggestions. I have a few tricks up my sleeve, but it's not really my sweet spot as much as language arts is. Words are kind of my thing. Anybody who knows me knows I like to talk, I like to read, and I like to write. So I love to help other homeschooling moms in this area of their homeschool as well. All right, we're going to dive right in. One of the top things that was put in that question box was, what do I do? My kid hates writing. I actually should have counted how many times I saw that phrase, my child hates writing. A lot. For a child who isn't naturally drawn to or interested in writing, it can be a struggle because they need to see that writing has a purpose. Beyond a lesson, beyond a curriculum, beyond a fill-in-the-blank worksheet, they need to know that writing has purpose for real life. And a lot of times within a language arts curriculum, especially a very traditional curriculum that's like a workbook with lots of like, here's the question or the concept, and then you fill in your answer, or, you read this passage and you do this, it gives you a question and you have to answer it. This kind of teaching takes writing out of the context of real life, and it makes it so the only purpose is to let's tick off the box that we did this today. Let's check this off so we can move along in our workbook. Let's do this so we can get a grade and we can achieve something. That is not the actual purpose of writing. So for a child who doesn't enjoy writing, skip the worksheets, first of all. Don't do worksheets. Don't do them. Just do real life writing. Do things that show your child that writing has a purpose for communicating an idea, for sharing your thoughts and feelings, for actually accomplishing something in your real life, like writing a grocery list, making a menu plan, sending a letter to someone, writing a to-do list, or writing a list of things you need at the store, giving directions to someone to go somewhere, sending a message to someone to say that you care about them or we're thinking about them, asking someone a question for something that you need, sending an email to the librarian to ask them to, stock a specific book that you really want. There are so many things that we can teach our kids about how writing is used in everyday life. So I have this really simple guide that you can download totally free. It's called The Everyday Writer, and I just wrote down a bunch of different ideas for ways that we use writing in everyday life and how your kids can do it too. There's ideas for all ages, all abilities. You can just go to siloandsage.com/workshops. I know that sounds like a weird link because there's like a bunch of freebies on that page. So there's like free guides, free downloads, and free workshops. But it's at the very top of the page, siloandsage.com/workshops. It's called The Everyday Writer, really simple and easy, and it will help your child see that writing has purpose and it isn't just for a lesson or a curriculum or to get the right answer. And when it comes to creative writing, which I know that can be a big struggle for kids who aren't super interested in writing, to take their writing from something that's like, oh, I'm writing this list or I'm writing directions to do how to do something. And now I have to write something creative. I have to come up with my own ideas. I really encourage you to do some kind of paired writing first. So if you have more than one child, I like to pair one of my kids who's very interested in writing with the child who's not as interested in writing so that they kind of work together. And the child who's not as interested, they can be part of the process. They can be part of the idea, forming and the brainstorming. And maybe they could write some things down, but they don't have to be fully responsible for it. And if you don't have any other kids in your house that, can do this together, do it with your child yourself, or invite a friend over and they can do it together. You can kind of have this little writing club that you do together. It doesn't even have to be anything formal. That was just the first thing that popped into my mind. But do it together so that it doesn't, the full pressure of it isn't on your child. But it also helps to just start with brainstorming. Make a list of ideas, make some little thought bubbles, one of those little webs where you can okay, here's my main character and here's some things about them, and then turn that into a description. Take it in baby steps if they really struggle with that creative writing piece and see, do they have trouble with the idea formation? Do they have trouble with the actual physical act of writing, which is totally a thing? Some kids, they don't actually struggle with the ideas. They struggle with the actual putting pen to paper and writing things down. So doing it on the computer is sometimes better. What is it about writing that they don't really enjoy? So see if you can diagnose the problem a little bit and then do it together or do it with a sibling or a friend to kind of take that pressure off, so it's not just about them and their ideas, but it's something that is kind of like a group effort. Because once they see that, oh, this isn't so difficult, or this isn't all I'm making it up to be in my head, they might see it as this big mountain. And then once they kind of work through it with you or with a friend or a sibling, they see, oh, this isn't such a mountain anymore. It's just this little hill I need to go over. Now, after my child hates writing, the next thing that I heard the most often in this question box was, I need to find books that my kids will enjoy. I need to find books that my kids will pick up for themselves. I need to find books that my child who's 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, is interested in. I need to find books that are appropriate for my kids. I have a child who loves to read and reads all the time, and it's hard for me to keep up with the books that they read, and I need more ideas. So whether you're in the camp of my child doesn't really enjoy reading and I need some ideas and books to recommend to them, or my child reads so much that I have a hard time keeping up and finding books for them, it's a struggle, right? Finding the right books, finding enough books, keeping up with your child, or just finding that book that gets them excited about reading. A lot of times it just takes one book or one series for a kid to decide they are a reader. This is the case for one of my boys. He didn't really love reading until he found the I Survived series. Now, I would not call the I Survived series amazing literature, right? It's not anything that's going to go on a list of classics, but it's interesting and it's engaging, and it was exactly what he needed to decide that he was a reader. And it does sometimes take a little bit of experimentation, a little bit of hey, try this book, try that book. Maybe it takes you reading a book to them and they're like, ooh, I like that. So I like series books for this reason. You can experiment with different series because once they find one that they like, they're going to want all of them. And I say yes, if a child finds a series that they love and it gets them super hooked on reading, especially my kids who maybe weren't naturally drawn to reading, I am on it. I am going to get on thriftbooks.com and I'm going to order every single book in that series and I'm going to get it, so that it can fill your library so you will love reading. And that is actually exactly how it's worked for a couple of my kids, that they just needed to find the right series. They just needed to find the right thing to get them engaged. And then once they found that, it kind of snowballed from there. All right, let's find another series that's kind of similar. Let's find another one that's maybe a historical fiction that's, kind of in the same vein of that I Survive series. And that's what we did. And from there, we created a reader. Now, the other thing that can be really great for kids who are not super interested in reading, like maybe they don't pick up a novel or a chapter book and read it on their own, is to start with nonfiction. And I mean like simple nonfiction, not like really heavy, big chapter books, but nonfiction that's approachable, that is like a step up from a picture book, but not, that intense long chapter, like nonfiction chapter book. So simple books like these, the Who Is series. I think I actually have a couple of them here. Who Is, Who Was, there's different places. Now these, again, are also not super high quality writing, high quality literature, but they're informative. They tend to be engaging. I do think you have to kind of watch like the person if you are, looking for books that don't have like a specific agenda or maybe controversial information. Watch the person that you're reading about. But I think these are very informative. They're very clear. They're very simple, and they're kind of engaging. Let's say you have a kid who loves basketball. Why wouldn't you want to read this, biography about Michael Jordan? Has some like really simple pictures so that it's not overwhelming. Because when you have a chapter book that is broken up with pictures, it's just not as intimidating to pick up, right? So I just grabbed a few examples. So we've got these. There's this series, The Extraordinary Life of, this is Neil Armstrong, but there's engaging text. It's interesting to look at. This one doesn't have as many like pictures, but there's little facts that are kind of like pop-out facts. It does have some pictures, I guess, but it's not a ton of text on each page. I love these little pop-outs, little bits of information, quotes, did you know, facts. Like, it's engaging, it's interesting, and there's lots of different books on different people that they have on in this series. Super engaging for kids. Not as intimidating as a chapter book that's just full of text. This series has several different books. This one is kid athletes, but there's kid authors, kid innovators, scientists, presidents, lots of different books in this series. But it's a chapter book, but each chapter is on a different person. So it's not so, overwhelming in terms of information. You're kind of like switching from person to person. So it's a good like brain shift of like, oh, it's almost like you're reading a new book instead of one long chapter book. And so it's really interesting, engaging, has some cute little pictures, covers lots of different people. Find whatever it is that your kid is interested in. If your kid likes sports, or if they like art, choose the artist one. If they're really interested in engineering and science, you could try the innovators or the scientists one. Choose the one that kind of matches your child's interest and what you think they might enjoy, and they're going to be much more likely to pick it up and want to continue reading it. Or maybe you read a chapter and then they read a chapter. You read a chapter, they read a chapter. It's not them picking it up completely on their own, but it's engaging them, making them interested, kind of getting them in that habit of reading, and hopefully getting them a little bit interested. Weird but true books are so fun for kids to engage in and look at on their own because there's lots of different facts. They have so many books in these series. Like there's books on like every topic. This one is about the Middle Ages. This is not a topic that my kids would necessarily like go and pick up on their own, but they would be likely, they love these books. They would be very likely to pick it up, especially when you just leave it out. I leave these books in a basket, or I leave it on the kitchen table, or I put it on the coffee table. Some people call that strewing. I love to do this, and my kids are definitely going to pick it up, especially if it's new or a book they haven't seen in a while. So a lot of times when I go to the thrift store, instead of putting books right on the shelf, I put them on the kitchen table. I put them on the coffee table. I just set them on the couch, and I know my kids are going to pick them up. So what I like about these books is that the information, they've got lots of real pictures in here, lots of bite-sized little pieces of information. There are some really bizarre facts in some of these. Some of them are really kooky and crazy. And my kids think they're sometimes hysterical and just so weird that they're like, I cannot even believe it. I mean, weird but true. But it's just engaging. It's interesting. And no, this isn't a novel, but it is a certain kind of chapter book. Like, it's, if they were to read this whole thing, that is a lot of text. So maybe change your frame of reference that everything has to be a chapter book or everything has to be a novel. Think a little bit outside the box. All right, along kind of the same lines, these 100 things to know about science, amazing discoveries of 100 brilliant scientists, understanding money. These are from these are Usborne books sold through PaperPie. I will put a link in the description. I love PaperPie, like a lot. I have a whole video about them. If you haven't seen it, I can link to that one. We use them a lot in our homeschool, but also just like my kids love to read these books because if you look at, this is taking a concept that could be challenging and breaking it down and making it really fun, these great graphics, and illegal earning, growing money in a bank, choosing a cause, governments and money, just so many interesting things. And like I said, if they read this whole thing, this is a chapter book. It's not a novel, but it's an engaging and interesting book. I think these types of nonfiction books where they're kind of like bite-sized information on each page, it's less intimidating for kids. It's really approachable and engaging, and it doesn't feel as overwhelming as picking up an entire chapter book. So if you have a child who isn't super engaged in chapter books, especially like fiction chapter books, try nonfiction. It's much more engaging for a lot of kids. And I have found over my years in teaching, and then, I have boys, but boys find nonfiction pretty engaging. How do I keep my child interested? Once I mention it's for school, she's against it. I agree. I have kids who, if you say it's school, they are not interested in it at all. So don't call it school. We actually don't call what we do school generally. We might say family learning time. I just tend to say we're going to read and learn about something together. That is less intimidating than saying it's school. And especially if it's in a workbook, you can't hide that it's school, right? So do some things that aren't workbook based. Do things together. So maybe you want to write a story together and you say, okay, let's write this story about a dog who ran away. I don't know. And you write it back and forth. Maybe she writes a paragraph and you write a paragraph, or you come up with the idea together. Maybe she helps you to plan the menu for the week and she has to write it down. Maybe she gets to choose the book that you're going to read together before bedtime. Maybe you have a journal that you pass back and forth every night and you get to tell each other about your day, or, talk about things that are challenging to say in person. I don't know. Something that isn't workbooky and something that doesn't feel like school, because it's not. It's real life. Maybe together you write a letter to grandma. Together you invite a friend over for something and she has to write out the invitation. Anything you can do to make it real life, engaging. Maybe you read a book together and then you watch a documentary. So you've learned a lot, but it doesn't feel schooly, Now, I know this idea of like ditching curriculum or doing things that are like real life, but how do you measure it? How do you keep track of it? I have an entire video that talks about my journey through like curriculum and unschooling, kind of where I've landed now, which is kind of a middle ground. And I think that would be a great video for you to watch. I will link it up above. It really will give you kind of a changed mindset on what does it mean to teach our kids and what's the purpose of education. The purpose is not curriculum. We don't teach curriculum, we teach kids. And sometimes that means putting aside the curriculum because it's not the right tool. If you have a toolbox, Let's say you had a door and the door is locked shut and you can't get it open and you find a hammer. Now, sure, you could take the hammer and you could bang the door open, right? Like you could get the door open, it would do the job, but in your toolbox is also a key. And that would open the door much more easily than the hammer, right? Wouldn't damage anything. It would be super simple. Pop the key in, turn it, and it's open, right? This is what curriculum is. Curriculum is not always the key. Sometimes it's the hammer. So you have to think about the bigger picture. You are trying to teach your child. You're not teaching the curriculum. Now, I thought it was interesting that a phrase that kept coming up was, it feels like a chore. Whether it's reading or writing, you want your kids to love it, right? You want your kids to enjoy reading. You want them to love writing. And you know what? Not all kids are going to love it, especially writing. Like, I think reading tends to be a little bit easier for kids to love once they find the right kind of book, whether it's, the right genre or the right series, whatever it is. That can come along, right? But writing can be challenging to get kids to love to write. So this, whether you're talking about reading or writing, our kids need to see the purpose behind it. And they need to see it as more than an obligation. They need to see that I don't read to fulfill this, check mark in my curriculum or because mom asked me to. I'm not writing just for the purpose of getting a grade or passing to the next level or finishing this writing curriculum. I'm writing for a purpose. And maybe the lesson has a purpose that is, this small piece of a bigger picture, right? But why can't we talk about that with our kids? Why can't we say, hey, today we're going to do this activity, we're going to do this lesson, and we're learning about, we're learning about similes and metaphors, okay? Rather than just saying, this because it's what's in our curriculum, what's the purpose? Well, I want you to be a better communicator. I want you to be able to express yourself well. I want you to be creative in your thinking and to learn how to write things differently other than just in a plain way. Because similes and metaphors, they give some depth to our language, right? So let's show them some examples. Let's find a great picture book. I have one right here. This picture book is a great example of similes and metaphors. So we're going to take it out of the lesson and we're going to find a real example of it. Or maybe you have, there's like a newspaper that comes to your house, or you can go to the gas station and buy a newspaper and you can pull it out and you can find some examples of things that you are teaching your kids within the newspaper. And you can show them, this is the purpose. So you can communicate like this person is communicating. So you can communicate to your boss when you get a job and you don't sound like you don't have any idea what you're talking about. So don't make it a chore. Make it something that feels purposeful and it feels like it has a purpose in their overall life, not just for this moment, for this curriculum, for this lesson. Spelling, punctuation, and phonics are a struggle. This is something I heard several times in this question box too. Again, I'm going to say it, take it out of the lesson and put it in real life. Now, I have a whole video teaching on this in my brand new membership called the Literary Lounge. And right now, if you're watching this, right now when this video comes out, or within the first week or two of when this comes out, the doors are open for this membership, but it's only open for a short time, and then it won't be open again for another few months, like April. So this membership is all about language arts, and I have video teachings and book lists and all kinds of good stuff that I will get to in a second. Most spelling and vocabulary and grammar lessons are all stuck within the context of a lesson or a curriculum. They aren't put into the context of real life. So newspapers are a great example. Take out a newspaper article, find the different punctuation in the newspaper article. Find different words in there and see how they're spelled. Play Scrabble. Scrabble is an excellent way to practice spelling. Do crossword puzzles together. We love to get word of the day books And we just kind of like randomly sometimes we actually pick the day, sometimes we don't, and we just randomly pick a word that is interesting. But, just open it up. And what's the word of the day? Let's draw it. Let's, make some art that depicts this word. So we solidify this is the word. This is how we spell it. We're going to write it down, put it in a sentence. There are lots of different ways that you can take spelling and grammar, and you can take them out of the context of just a lesson and put them in an everyday life situation. If your child is writing a note to someone and you notice they're not using any periods, you can talk about it. Hey, I think this might be really tricky for your friend to read because there are no periods at the end of your sentences. Let's go back in and add them. Boom, you just taught periods. Picture books are a great way to talk about grammar. They always have beautiful adjectives. You can find examples of how an author used an adverb. You don't need a worksheet to teach grammar, especially in the younger years. In the younger years, you are experiencing life. You're writing with your kids hopefully every day. You can also do copywork. Copywork is an excellent way to practice. So if we're a Christian family, and so we copy scripture. You can copy a song or a poem. Lots of ways to practice spelling, grammar, punctuation in real life. And phonics, actually, I find phonics to be so easy to take into real life. Everything around you that you see is a word, right? I can see a lamp. I can see a window. I can see, my camera. All of those things start with a letter, okay? Lamp, window, camera. We can start to bring this into everyday conversation instead of just on a page. You're showing your kids, hey, these words are in our real life and these sounds are in our real life, and we need them to talk about objects. We need them to label objects. We need them to, communicate things. When you're in the grocery store, pointing out different words. Oh, hey, this says milk. Oh, what letter is that? Easy, right? We're teaching phonics in everyday life that way. My Play Your Way to Reading program actually is exactly this. Play-based, hands-on, real-life ways to teach phonics. Play Your Way to Reading, you can get that program on its own, but it's also part of the VIP level of my membership, the Literary Lounge. Now, I'm actually just going to tell you about it because I've been talking kind of around it a little bit. The Literary Lounge is a membership to help your family fall in love with language arts. Now, there are several parts to this membership. There's a basic level of the membership. In the basic level, which is super affordable, you get access to the lit list. These are my personal book recommendations, books that we have read, books that we have vetted, so I know that there are no, inappropriate things. There's nothing questionable in them. I come to these conclusions from our Christian faith background. So if you are a Christian, you can know that that's where I'm coming from too. And if you're not, you'll just know, hey, she has these high standards. That's where I'm coming from with my, the content of these books, that's what I want for my kids. So the lit list is organized in two ways. There's a nonfiction section that is organized by topics. So like space, plants. So you've got a science section, a social studies section that talks about geography, U.S. history, government, and politics. Then you can find within those sections, you can find book recommendations, picture books, chapter books, books for teens that are on these topics. So you can build your own unit studies. Do you know how many hours I have spent? I probably spent days, months of my life researching books for unit studies. My kids are interested in a topic, or we want to learn about and study a topic, and then I need to go and find all the books on that topic because I'm not one to just go and buy a curriculum with a workbook and, that's not really our style. We like to do literature-based learning. So if that's your thing too, you don't need to do all that work. It's all done for you. And then we have the fiction section, and we have that broken up into ages and types of book, realistic fiction, historical fiction, fantasy. And these are books that we have actually seen and read and have on our bookshelves. And if you've ever seen a picture or a video, there's a whole homeschool tour video here on my channel that I can link for you. If you've ever seen our home library, I'm not joking that we have a ton of books. So This is a passion of mine, and I've always thought, how can I make it so someone can kind of like take a tour of my library? This is it. You can see what's on my shelves. Now, as of right now, I don't have every single book on that list. I'm continually adding to it, and I will continue to because I'm constantly getting new books. I literally just got new books in the mail, and they have not been added because I'm looking at them, making sure they're right, making sure that they will fit on our shelf and on the lit list. So the lit list is a huge part of the basic membership, but you also get ebooks like Building a Home Library. You get an ebook called Raising Readers in a Screen-Filled World on how to navigate this society we have that pushes screens on our kids rather than books, and how to raise kids in a family culture of reading. You'll also get a guide about nature journaling and how to incorporate that in your homeschool, and you'll continue to get more as these come around. There's also video teachings. So like I said, there's one specifically about spelling and punctuation and how you can teach that without a curriculum and without worksheets. I've also got other video teachings like what do you do when your kids resist you and won't do their work. There are several in there now, and you'll continue to get more as the membership goes on. You'll also get monthly calls with me, live calls that are recorded if you don't come live. And then there is a VIP section, and the VIP is a little bit more, but you're basically getting the entire library of language arts resources, pre-K through 12, that I have created that are in my shop. So all of those things, you can get those individually, but you can get them for a crazy good deal as part of the VIP membership. You'll also get access to the whole family learning course that I have, which teaches you how to create your own unit studies and how to teach a wide range of ages. So the whole idea behind this membership is to help your family fall in love with language arts and to make it simple and fun for you and your kids. So you can go to siloandsage.com/join if you want to read more about it. Send me a message or leave a comment if you have a specific question, but I would love to have you as part of the membership. And if you are coming and watching this video at a time when the membership isn't open, we open it quarterly. So if you go to siloandsage.com/join and the membership isn't open, you can get on the waiting list so that you can join the next round. And most of the things that are in the membership, all of the like ebooks and the learning resources, those are all available in my shop to buy separately. They're just all included at like a really good deal, a really good price within the membership. Because I really know what it's like to be a homeschool mom, especially one who has multiple kids, multiple ages, and you want to make it affordable. And it just is nice to have like one-stop shop where you're like, hey, I've got everything I need for language arts in this spot. I don't need to go anywhere else. And I don't need a workbook. I need quality classic picture books with well-illustrated pictures and good heroic lessons. That was something I got a couple times too on my question box. And I will tell you, you need to look at older books. Go to the thrift store, go to antique stores that are decently priced, go to your grandma's house or even your own house if your parents kept your books, if you were maybe like vintage like I am and you're, not super young. Maybe you could go to your parents' house and you can find those books that were published pre-2000. That is what I find for especially like early readers that were published pre-2000 are so much better than the early readers that were published later. The Golden Book series, oh my gosh, those books, the early ones, not the ones that are based on like cartoon characters or TV shows, but the early ones, those are so sweet. I have a bunch of these book recommendations listed in the lit list, but you can also go to my Amazon storefront and you can find some like of our family favorites. I'll give you a couple quick examples of some that I really love that kind of like remind me of those like the Golden Book style. Home in the Woods by Eliza Wheeler. Love, love, love this book. This is just such a sweet and emotional story. Farmhouse by Sophie Blackall. Such a good, sweet story. It follows a family, has beautiful illustrations. Mountain That Loved a Bird is one of my favorites. When it comes to picture books, you're gonna have to like really look at the book, right? Because The Farmhouse and Home in the Woods, those were published recently. But a lot of books that are published nowadays are just like, they're crass, they're talking about like potty things, and I'm just not a fan. So either you need a trusted friend or a trusted book list like the Lit List, or a friend that you can say, hey, what books do you recommend? So get in your homeschool community, share books, have like a book swap party where you share your ideas, or just everybody brings books and you get to like see. Everybody bring your top 10 favorite picture book, and we're going to get together. We're all going to look and, make it a wholesome book, make it sweet, make it well illustrated. Ask for suggestions from your local Facebook community if you don't have an in-person community, or get in the literary lounge and get access to the Lit List, where you're going to find good quality books like that. All right, there were lots more questions, but I don't have time to answer anymore. So make sure you head over to Instagram and follow me there if you don't already, because I do answer a lot of these types of questions a little more off the cuff and, a little more spontaneously when they come in. So you can always send me a message over there if you have a question, or leave it below. If I get enough questions on the same topic, I try to do videos about it. So if you're interested in the Literary Lounge and you're watching this when the doors are open, head to siloandsage.com/join. Would love, love, love to have you as part of this membership. Join us in our live calls, ask your questions, and fall in love with language arts again. So I'm going to see you soon in another video. And in the meantime, keep cultivating your home, friends. Bye.